The scream died in Lily Catherine's throat before it could escape, her body tumbling through empty air as her father-in-law's hands released her shoulders at the top of the grand staircase in his Denver mansion. Time stretched impossibly thin during those terrible seconds of falling, the polished wooden steps rushing up to meet her with merciless inevitability. Pain exploded through her ribs, her shoulder, her hip as she crashed down each step, the world spinning in a nauseating blur of burgundy carpet and dark wood until she landed in a broken heap at the bottom. Through the haze of agony, she heard Charles Whitmore's heavy footsteps descending slowly behind her, deliberate and unhurried, and then his cold voice cutting through the ringing in her ears like a blade. "You should have signed those papers when I asked nicely, girl. Now you will sign them, or next time you will not survive the fall." Lily tried to speak, to breathe, but her chest refused to cooperate. Blood pooled warm beneath her head, and darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. Charles leaned down, his weathered face twisted with contempt, and she smelled whiskey on his breath as he hissed his final warning. "My son may have been fool enough to leave his share of the ranch to you, but I will have what is mine. You have 3 days to sign over your claim, or I will make sure you have another unfortunate accident. Do we understand each other?" She could not answer. The darkness swallowed her whole. When Lily woke, she was moving, jostling in what felt like the back of a wagon. Every breath sent lightning bolts of pain through her ribs. Her head throbbed with a deep, sickening ache. She tried to open her eyes, but one was swollen shut. Through the other, she saw only the dark canvas of a wagon cover above her and heard the steady clip-clop of horses' hooves on hard-packed dirt. "Easy now," a man's voice said, low and gentle. "Do not try to move too much. You're hurt pretty bad." Lily turned her head slightly, biting back a whimper at the pain, and focused on the figure sitting beside her in the wagon bed. Even through her blurred vision, she could make out broad shoulders, a dusty brown hat, and a face shadowed by the dim light filtering through the canvas. His eyes, though, were clear and concerned, watching her with careful attention. "Who?" she managed to whisper, her throat raw and dry. "Name is Ryder Jameson," he said, reaching for a canteen. "I found you in an alley behind the Whitmore mansion about 6 hours ago. You were unconscious and bleeding. I have been trying to get you somewhere safe." He lifted her head carefully, supporting her with surprising gentleness for such large, work-roughened hands, and brought the canteen to her lips. The water was warm but tasted like salvation. She drank carefully, each swallow an effort. "Charles," she breathed when he pulled the canteen away. "He pushed me." Ryder's jaw tightened, and she saw his hand curl into a fist against his knee. "The old man himself did this to you?" She nodded fractionally, tears burning in her good eye. The movement made her head swim, and she felt consciousness slipping away again despite her efforts to hold on. The last thing she heard was Ryder's voice, firm and certain. "He will not touch you again. I promise you that." The next time awareness returned, Lily found herself lying on something soft, and the wagon had stopped. She smelled sage and wood smoke, heard the crackle of a fire nearby. This time, opening her eyes was slightly easier, though her vision remained hazy. She was in a small cabin, rough-hewn logs forming the walls, a simple stone fireplace casting warm light across the single room. She lay on a bed in the corner, covered with clean blankets that smelled of lye soap and fresh air. "You are awake," Ryder said, appearing in her limited field of vision. In the firelight, she could see him more clearly now. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His face was strong and honest, with lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of years spent squinting into the prairie sun. He moved with the easy grace of someone comfortable in his own body, confident, but not cocky. "How do you feel?" "Like I fell down a flight of stairs," Lily said, trying for humor despite the pain. Her voice came out as barely more than a rasp. To her surprise, Ryder smiled, though it was sad around the edges. I suppose that is exactly what happened. I cleaned your wounds as best I could, but I'm no doctor. You've got some bad bruising and I think maybe a couple of cracked ribs. Your head was bleeding something fierce, but head wounds always do bleed a lot. I do not think your skull is cracked, but you need rest. Where are we? Lily asked, trying to piece together what had happened. About 30 miles outside Denver, heading toward the Nebraska border. This is my winter line shack. I was bringing cattle down from the high country when I stopped in Denver for supplies. Found you in that alley on my way back to my horse. The doctor who got called to the Whitmore house was just leaving when I rode past, and I heard him telling someone you had left against his advice. Figured that was a lie, so I went looking. Memory flooded back in painful waves. Her husband Thomas, dead these 4 months from pneumonia. The reading of his will, which had shocked everyone by leaving his third of the massive Whitmore cattle ranch to her instead of back to his father. Charles Whitmore's cold fury barely contained in the lawyer's office, his increasingly aggressive demands that she sign over her inheritance, his threats. And finally yesterday, or was it longer ago now? His hands on her shoulders at the top of the grand staircase, and that split second when she knew what he intended before she fell. He will come looking for me, she said, fear tightening her chest. Charles will not let this go. He wants the land, and he wants me gone. Which is why I did not take you to any of the hotels or boarding houses in Denver, Ryder said calmly, settling into a chair near the bed. Far as anyone knows, you left town heading south toward Colorado Springs. I made sure a few people saw a woman matching your description get on that stage. Meanwhile, we went north and east. He will not find you here. Why? Lily asked, studying this stranger who had risked himself for her. Why would you help me? You do not know me. Ryder was quiet for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the fire. When he spoke, his voice was low and measured. My mother was married to a man who hurt her, my real father, actually. He would beat her when he drank, which was often. When I was 8 years old, he hit her so hard she did not wake up for 2 days. A neighbor, an old cowhand named Ryder Jameson, found us and took us away. He gave us his name and raised me as his own son. He taught me that a real man protects those who cannot protect themselves, especially women and children. When I saw you lying in that alley, broken and bleeding, I saw my mother. I could not walk away. The raw honesty in his words made Lily's throat tight with emotion. She had been married to Thomas for 2 years, and in all that time, he had never spoken to her with such straightforward sincerity. Their marriage had been pleasant enough, built on companionship and mutual respect, but Thomas had been a quiet man, more comfortable with silence than conversation, and his father had always been a looming, domineering presence in their lives, controlling every aspect of the ranch and treating Lily as little more than an inconvenient addition to the family. Thank you, she whispered, the words inadequate, but all she had. Thank you for saving my life. Ryder nodded once, then stood. You should rest now. I will heat up some stew. You need to eat something when you can manage it. Over the following days, Lily's body began the slow process of healing. The swelling around her eye gradually receded, revealing the spectacular purple and yellow bruising beneath. Her ribs ached with every breath, every movement, but the sharp stabbing pain dulled to a more manageable throb. The gash on her head closed, though Ryder warned her she would have a scar hidden in her hairline. She did not care about scars. She cared about surviving. Ryder proved to be a patient and attentive caretaker. He helped her sit up when the dizziness became too much, held her steady when she needed to stand, and turned his back to give her privacy when she required the chamber pot. He cooked simple but nourishing meals, brought her water, and changed the bandages on her wounds with surprising gentleness. He talked to her sometimes, telling her stories about his life as a cowboy, about the ranch he worked on, about his adopted father Samuel, who had died 3 years back. Other times, he was content to sit in comfortable silence, whittling small figures from scraps of wood while the fire crackled. Lily found herself watching him when he thought she was sleeping. studying the way he moved, the way his hands worked the wood with practiced skill. There was something deeply calming about his presence, something steady and reliable. In the chaos and pain of her recent life, Ryder Jameson was an anchor, solid and unmovable. "Do you ever get lonely out here?" she asked one evening, about a week after he had found her. She was sitting up in bed now, able to move without gasping, though her ribs still protested any sudden motion. Ryder looked up from the saddle he was mending, surprised by the question. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but I am used to my own company. Cowboying is a solitary life much of the year. I've got my horse, my thoughts, and the land. That is usually enough." "Usually?" He set down his tools and met her gaze across the small cabin. The firelight played across his features, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the thoughtful set of his mouth. "I suppose there are times I wish I had someone to share it with, someone to come home to, but that kind of life requires settling down, putting down roots, and I have been running my whole life. Hard to stop when you have been moving so long." "Running from what?" Lily asked softly. "From memories mostly, from the past, from being that scared 8-year-old boy watching his mother suffer." He paused, seeming to consider whether to continue. "Samuel gave me a good life, taught me to be strong, to stand on my own. But he also taught me that staying in one place makes you vulnerable, makes it easier for the bad things to find you. So I keep moving. I work a season here, a season there. Never put down roots too deep." Lily understood that fear more than she would have a few weeks ago. "I thought I was safe when I married Thomas," she said, her voice catching slightly on her dead husband's name. "I thought I had found a home, a place where I belonged. My parents died when I was 17, left me with nothing. Thomas offered me security, respectability. I did not love him the way the novels talk about love, but I cared for him. He was kind to me. And then he died, and I realized the security was an illusion. Charles never wanted me there. He barely tolerated me when Thomas was alive. Once he was gone, I became nothing but an obstacle to what Charles wanted." "You are not nothing," Ryder said with sudden intensity. "You are a person, with rights and a claim to what your husband left you. Charles Whitmore is a bully and a criminal, and he should hang for what he did to you." "But he will not," Lily said bitterly. "Men like Charles Whitmore never face consequences. They are too rich, too powerful, too well connected. If I went to the law, who would believe me? I am just his dead son's widow, a woman with no family and no influence. He would say I fell, that it was an accident, and everyone would believe him." The anger in Ryder's eyes was fierce and protective. "Then we make sure you are somewhere he cannot reach you, somewhere you can build a new life." "Where?" Lily asked, feeling the weight of her circumstances pressing down. "I have no money, no resources. Everything I owned was in that house. Charles will claim Thomas's share of the ranch reverts to him if I cannot prove my claim, and I certainly cannot do that from hiding." Ryder was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Finally, he spoke. "I have been saving my wages for years now. I have got enough to buy a small spread, maybe up in Nebraska territory. Nothing fancy, but enough to run some cattle, build a decent life. You could come with me, as my wife, if you are willing. It would give you protection, a new name, a fresh start." Lily stared at him, shocked. "You barely know me. Why would you tie yourself to me like that?" "Because I have spent the last week getting to know you," Ryder said simply. "I know you are strong, even when you are hurt. I know you are brave because you keep going even when you are scared. I know you are kind because you thank me every day for things any decent person would do. And I know that if I let you go off on your own with nothing, Charles Whitmore will eventually find you, and next time I will not be there to stop him." He stood and crossed to the bed, kneeling beside it so they were at eye level. "I am not asking you to love me. I am asking you to let me protect you, to give you the chance to heal and find your feet again, If something more comes of it in time, well, that would be fine by me. If not, at least you would be safe." Lily looked into his honest, earnest face and felt something shift in her chest. This man, this virtual stranger, was offering her salvation with no expectation of anything in return. It was more than Thomas had ever offered, more than anyone had offered since her parents died. And beneath the gratitude, beneath the relief, she felt the first stirring of something else, something warm and fragile and hopeful. "I do not want to be a burden to you," she said quietly. "You would not be. You would be my partner, my wife, in name and in law. We would build something together, Lily Katherine, something that belongs to us, that no one can take away." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull back if she wanted, and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused, his grip careful of her healing injuries. "Say yes. Take the chance. See where the road leads us." Lily took a shaky breath, feeling tears prick her eyes. Not tears of pain this time, but of something like relief, like hope. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you, Ryder Jameson." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise after a long night. They married 2 weeks later in a small town called Ogallala, Nebraska, where no one knew them and no one asked questions. Lily was able to walk by then, though she still moved carefully, favoring her healing ribs. She wore a simple blue dress that Ryder bought for her from the general store, and he wore his cleanest shirt and vest. The justice of the peace performed the ceremony in his parlor, his wife serving as witness, and within 10 minutes Lily was Mrs. Lily Jameson, her old identity legally shed like an old skin. Ryder kissed her softly when the justice pronounced them married, a gentle brush of lips that sent warmth spreading through her chest. It was chaste and respectful, but there was a promise in it nonetheless, a promise of patience, of care, of something more when she was ready. They traveled north after that, following the North Platte River into the wild open country of the Nebraska Panhandle. The land here was different from Denver's mountain shadows, all rolling prairie and vast sky, with the river cutting a green ribbon through the brown and gold grasslands. Ryder talked as they traveled, pointing out landmarks, telling her about the homestead he had scouted the previous summer. "It is near Scottsbluff," he explained, as they rumbled along in the wagon he had purchased with his savings. "There are bluffs that rise up from the plains like ancient monuments visible for miles around. The land is good for cattle, with water from the river and shelter in the breaks. It is rough country, but it is beautiful. I think you will like it." Lily found that she trusted his judgment. Over the weeks since he had found her, Ryder had proven himself to be thoughtful and competent, a man who measured his words and followed through on his promises. He treated her with a respect and consideration she had never experienced before, never pushing her, never demanding more than she was ready to give. At night, he made camp and gave her the bedroll by the fire while he slept in the wagon, insisting that she needed the warmth for her healing. When she protested that he should not sleep in discomfort on her account, he just smiled and said that he had slept in worse places and been grateful for it. The landscape grew more dramatic as they traveled west along the river. The bluffs Ryder had mentioned began to appear on the horizon, massive formations of sandstone and clay that rose hundreds of feet above the plains. They were striped in layers of tan and gray, carved by wind and water into fantastic shapes. Scottsbluff itself was the most impressive, a prominent peak that dominated the skyline, a landmark that had guided travelers on the Oregon Trail decades before. "It is beautiful," Lily breathed when they finally stood at the base of the bluffs, staring up at the towering formations. "It is," Ryder agreed, but he was looking at her, not the bluffs. The homestead Ryder had claimed was about 5 miles from the town of Scottsbluff, set in a valley where Mitchell Creek fed into the North Platte. The land was indeed good, with rich bottomland along the creek for hay and grazing for cattle on the surrounding prairie. There was a small cabin already built by the previous owner, who had given up and headed back east after a hard winter. It was rough but solid, with a stone fireplace, wooden floors, and 2 rooms instead of 1. Compared to the line shack where Lily had recovered, it seemed almost luxurious. They spent the first weeks making the place habitable. Ryder repaired the leaky roof and reinforced the corrals while Lily cleaned inside, scrubbing years of accumulated dirt from the floors and walls. Her ribs still ached with hard labor, but she was determined to do her share, to prove she was not a burden, but a partner. Ryder watched her carefully, ready to step in if she pushed herself too hard, but he seemed to understand her need to contribute. As they worked side by side, Lily found herself noticing small things about her new husband. The way he hummed tunelessly while he worked. The way he always made sure she ate before he did. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was patient with her lingering nervousness, never approaching her suddenly or without warning, always making sure she knew where he was and what he was doing. He seemed to understand instinctively that trust for her would take time to rebuild. One evening, about a month after they arrived at the homestead, Lily was preparing supper when Ryder came in from the corrals. He washed up at the basin and came to stand beside her at the stove, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body. "Smells good," he said, peering into the pot where she was frying salt pork and potatoes. "It is the same thing we've eaten for the past week," Lily said with a laugh. "I'm hardly a master chef." "It tastes good because you made it," Ryder said simply. He hesitated, then added, "Lily, I want you to know that I'm happy you are here. These past weeks, working on this place with you, have been some of the best of my life. I know this arrangement started out of necessity, but for me it is becoming something more." Lily set down the wooden spoon and turned to face him. They were standing very close now, and she could see the uncertainty in his eyes, the vulnerability. This strong, capable man was opening his heart to her, taking a risk as surely as she had when she agreed to marry him. "For me too," she said softly. "I did not expect this, Ryder. I married you for safety, for security, but you have given me so much more than that. You have given me respect and partnership and—" She paused, searching for the right word. "Hope. You have made me believe that I can have a future that is not defined by fear or loss." "You can have anything you want," Ryder said, reaching up to cup her cheek gently. "You are the strongest woman I have ever known, Lily Jameson. You survived something that would have broken most people. You got up and kept going. You built a new life from nothing." "Not from nothing," Lily corrected, leaning into his touch. "From your kindness, from your courage in helping me when you could have just walked by." "I could never have walked by," Ryder said. And then he was kissing her properly this time, with a warmth and intensity that made her breath catch. His arms came around her carefully, mindful still of her ribs, and she pressed closer, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. She could feel his heart beating strong and steady beneath her palms, could taste the sweetness of the kiss, and for the first time since Thomas died, since Charles pushed her, since her whole world fell apart, Lily felt truly safe. More than safe. She felt cherished. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Ryder rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling in love with you," he said quietly. "I need you to know that. I know it has only been a couple of months, and I know we married for practical reasons, but my feelings are not practical anymore. They are real, and they are deep, and I needed to tell you." "I am falling in love with you too," Lily whispered, the truth of it settling in her chest like a warm coal. "I did not think I could feel this way again, after Thomas, after everything, but you make me feel alive, Ryder. You make me feel like myself again, like I am more than just a victim or a widow. You make me feel like a woman who is worthy of love." "You are worthy of everything good in this world," Ryder said fiercely. "Do not ever doubt that." They held each other as the sun set outside the cabin windows, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The supper burned slightly in the forgotten pan, but neither of them cared. They had found something far more nourishing than food. They had found each other. That night, Lily invited Ryder into the bedroom they had been sharing in name only. He came to her with tenderness and patience, taking his time, making sure she was comfortable and willing every step of the way. It was nothing like her experiences with Thomas, which had been dutiful and quick, a marital obligation fulfilled with minimal fuss. With Ryder, there was passion and care, heat and gentleness intertwined. He worshipped her body with his hands and mouth, careful of her still healing bruises, and when they finally came together, it felt like a true joining, a completion of the vows they had spoken weeks before. Afterward, lying tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, Lily felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Did I hurt you?" Ryder asked immediately, concern flooding his voice. "Lily, I am so sorry. I should have been more careful." "No," she interrupted, placing her fingers on his lips. "No, you did not hurt me. These are happy tears. I did not know it could be like that. I did not know that being with someone could make me feel so complete." Ryder kissed her forehead, her temples, her damp cheeks. It is like that when two people truly care for each other, when they are partners in every sense. This is just the beginning for us, Lily. We have a whole lifetime ahead of us to love each other. The lifetime stretched out before them like the vast Nebraska prairie, full of possibility and promise. The seasons turned, and their homestead grew. Ryder used the last of his savings to purchase a small herd of cattle, 30 head to start with, and they worked together to build the herd through careful breeding and management. Lily proved to have a good head for numbers and began keeping the books, tracking expenses and income with meticulous detail. She also started a garden, coaxing vegetables from the rich soil along the creek, and began learning to preserve food for the long winter ahead. The town of Scottsbluff was small but growing, a supply point for ranchers and farmers scattered across the panhandle. Lily and Ryder made trips into town every few weeks for supplies, and gradually they became known and accepted in the community. Lily was careful to never mention Denver or her past, and Ryder had spread the story that they had met in Cheyenne and married there before heading to Nebraska. No one questioned it. The West was full of people starting over, leaving old lives behind, but the past has a way of finding you no matter how far you run. It was a cold November afternoon, almost a year after Lily and Ryder had married, when trouble arrived. Lily was in the cabin working on a quilt when she heard the sound of horses approaching. She stood and went to the window, her heart immediately beginning to race. 2 men on horseback were riding up the track toward the cabin, and even from a distance there was something purposeful and ominous about their approach. Ryder was in the barn, and Lily ran to get him, her old fear surging back. He came immediately, his face going hard when he saw the riders. "Get inside," he said quietly. "Stay away from the windows. If things go bad, there is a rifle under the bed and a pistol in the kitchen drawer. You remember how to use them?" He had taught her to shoot over the summer, insisting that a woman living on an isolated ranch needed to know how to protect herself. Lily nodded, her mouth too dry to speak. She went back inside but positioned herself where she could see out a crack in the shutters. The 2 men dismounted in the yard. They were rough-looking types, with the hard eyes of men who lived by violence. One was tall and thin with a long scar running down his cheek. The other was shorter but heavily built, with a thick beard and a gun worn low on his hip. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" Ryder asked, stepping out to meet them. His own gun was holstered at his side, and his hand rested near it casually, a subtle warning. "Maybe," the tall man said. "We are looking for someone. A woman named Lily Katherine Whitmore. Word is she might have ended up in these parts." Lily felt her blood turn to ice. Charles had found her. After all this time, after all the distance, he had tracked her down. "No one here by that name," Ryder said evenly. "Just my wife and me." "That so?" The bearded man stepped forward, his hand moving to his gun. "Because we heard tell that Ryder Jameson, Cowboy, left Denver last spring with a woman matching Mrs. Whitmore's description. We also heard that Ryder Jameson filed a homestead claim right here. Seems like quite a coincidence. Seems like you heard wrong, Ryder said, his voice taking on an edge of steel. My wife's name is Lily Jameson, and she has never been to Denver in her life. Now I suggest you gentlemen get back on your horses and ride out of here before there is trouble. The tall man laughed, a cold, ugly sound. Or what? You will shoot us? There are two of us and one of you, Cowboy. The odds are not in your favor. Mr. Whitmore sent us to bring his daughter-in-law back to Denver, and that is what we intend to do. He has got papers that say she is not in her right mind, that she needs to be brought back for her own safety, all legal and proper. He forged those papers, and we all know it, Ryder said. Charles Whitmore tried to murder his daughter-in-law, and she has every right to be as far away from him as possible. That is a serious accusation, the bearded man said. You have any proof? The scars on her body are proof enough, Ryder shot back. Now get off my land before I make you. The two men exchanged glances, and Lily saw them tense, ready to draw. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She grabbed the rifle from under the bed and moved to the door, ready to step out if needed. But before anyone could draw, another voice called out from the direction of the road. I would not do that if I were you boys. Everyone turned to see another rider approaching, this one wearing a badge on his chest. The marshal from Scottsbluff, a man named Henry Carter, whom Lily and Ryder had met several times in town. He was an older man, in his 50s, with silver hair and a calm, authoritative demeanor. Marshal, the tall man said, clearly surprised, this does not concern you. When men come into my territory with drawn guns, it concerns me, Marshal Carter said mildly, reining in his horse next to the two men. What is your business here? We are here on behalf of Charles Whitmore of Denver, the bearded man said. We are here to collect his daughter-in-law, who is not in her right mind and needs to be returned to her family. Is that so? Marshal Carter looked over at Ryder. Jameson, you want to tell me your side of things? Ryder met the marshal's eyes squarely. My wife was assaulted by Charles Whitmore last spring. He pushed her down a flight of stairs in an attempt to kill her because she inherited property he wanted. I found her and got her out of Denver before he could finish the job. We married legal and proper, and she has every right to be here as my wife. These men are not here to help her. They are here to drag her back to a man who tried to murder her. The marshal's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. That is a serious claim. You have any proof, Mrs. Jameson? Lily realized he was speaking to her, and she pushed open the cabin door, stepping out onto the porch with the rifle in her hands. All eyes turned to her. I have the scars, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. And I have the truth. Charles Whitmore pushed me down the main staircase of his mansion because I refused to sign over my late husband's inheritance. He told me I would sign the papers or he would kill me. Ryder found me and saved my life. I did not run away because I am not in my right mind. I ran away because Charles Whitmore is a dangerous man who was going to kill me. The marshal studied her for a long moment, then looked back at the two hired men. You boys have anything in writing? Any legal document saying Mrs. Jameson here is incompetent or in need of care? The tall man pulled a folded paper from his coat. Right here. Signed by a doctor in Denver. Marshal Carter took the paper and read it over, his expression thoughtful. Then he handed it back. This paper says Lily Katherine Whitmore is in need of supervision due to mental instability. But this woman here is Lily Katherine Jameson, legally married to Ryder Jameson. Far as I can see, you have got no claim on her. She is a grown woman, married, and living on her own land. Unless you have got a court order saying otherwise, I suggest you head on back to Denver and tell Mr. Whitmore that his daughter-in-law has moved on with her life. The old man is not going to like that, the bearded man said dangerously. I do not much care what the old man likes or does not like, Marshal Carter said, his voice hardening. This is my territory, and in my territory, women are not dragged away against their will by hired thugs. If Charles Whitmore has a legitimate legal claim, he can file it through proper channels and let a judge decide. Until then, Mrs. Jameson stays right here. Are we clear? The two men glared at the marshal, at Ryder, and at Lily. For a moment, the situation balanced on a knife's edge. Then the tall man spat in the dirt and turned back to his horse. "We will tell Mr. Whitmore what you said," he growled, "but I do not think this is over." "It is over as far as I am concerned," Marshal Carter said. "And if either of you show up here again without a legal warrant, I will arrest you for trespassing and harassment. Now ride out." The two men mounted and rode away, their backs stiff with anger. Lily felt her knees go weak with relief, and she leaned against the porch post to steady herself. Ryder was beside her in an instant, his arm around her waist supporting her. "Thank you, Marshal," Ryder said, his voice rough with emotion. "I appreciate your help." "I could tell something was not right," Marshal Carter said, dismounting. "I saw those two in town yesterday asking questions about you folks. Figured they were up to no good." "I am sorry you had to go through that, Mrs. Jameson, but I meant what I said. Far as the law here is concerned, you are a free woman, married and independent. If Whitmore wants to pursue this, he will have to do it legally, and I do not think his case will hold up once the truth comes out." "What if he does pursue it?" Lily asked, voicing her deepest fear. "What if he has enough money and influence to twist the law?" Marshal Carter was quiet for a moment. "That is possible," he admitted. "Rich men can buy a lot of things, including judges sometimes, but here is what I know. You are living quietly, minding your own business, not causing any trouble. You are married to a good man with a good reputation, and you have got a community here that will stand up for you if it comes to that. Whitmore might have influence in Denver, but this is not Denver. This is Nebraska, and we do things different here." Lily felt tears sting her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me." "I have dealt with enough liars in my time to know truth when I hear it," the marshal said gently. "You stay safe now, Mrs. Jameson. And Jameson, you keep an eye out. Those boys might not come back, but it pays to be careful." After the marshal left, Ryder and Lily went back into the cabin. Lily was trembling, the adrenaline of the confrontation draining away and leaving her shaky and exhausted. Ryder pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "It is all right," he murmured into her hair. "You are safe. I will not let anyone take you." "He will not stop," Lily said, her voice muffled against his chest. "Charles is a stubborn, vengeful man. He will find another way." "Then we will face it together," Ryder said firmly. "You are not alone anymore, Lily. You have got me, and you have got the law on your side, and you have got a community that knows you are a good person. Charles Whitmore is a long way away, and his power does not reach this far." Lily wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe that the life they were building was secure, that the past was truly behind her. But fear was a hard thing to shake, and it lingered in her bones like winter cold. The winter was hard that year, with heavy snows and bitter cold. Lily and Ryder stayed close to the cabin, venturing out only to care for the cattle and horses. The isolation was both a blessing and a curse. It kept them safe from prying eyes and Charles Whitmore's hired men, but it also left Lily alone with her thoughts and fears for long hours while Ryder worked outside. Ryder noticed her growing quietness and did his best to draw her out. He told her stories in the evenings, taught her to play cards, read to her from the few books they owned. He was endlessly patient, never pushing, always offering comfort when the nightmares woke her in the dark hours of the night. "I am sorry," Lily said one night after waking from a dream where she was falling again, endlessly falling. "I am sorry. I am so much trouble." "You are not trouble," Ryder said, pulling her close. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You think I do not have bad nights? You think I do not still dream about the things my father did to my mother? About being too small and weak to stop him? We all carry scars, Lily. Yours are just fresher than mine." "When does it get better?" she asked, her voice small in the darkness. "A little more every day," Ryder said. "One day you will realize you have not thought about Charles Whitmore for an entire day. Then a week will pass. Then a month. The fear will always be there, I think, but it will get smaller. It will lose its power over you. And I will be here every step of the way, reminding you that you are strong, that you are loved, that you are safe." Lily held on to those words like a lifeline. Spring arrived slowly. the snow melting and the creeks running high with runoff. The prairie turned green almost overnight, and wildflowers bloomed in riotous color. With the warming weather came new life. Several of their cows gave birth to healthy calves, and Lily found herself smiling more, the winter's darkness lifting from her spirit. She also realized she had not had her monthly courses in some time. At first, she thought it was stress, the lingering effects of her injury, and the fear. But as the weeks passed and other symptoms appeared, nausea in the mornings, tenderness in her breasts, she began to suspect the truth. She waited until she was certain before telling Ryder. He had ridden out early one morning to check on the herd, and she spent the time pacing the cabin, her hands pressed to her still flat stomach, trying to sort through her tangled emotions. Fear was there. Fear of bringing a child into a world where Charles Whitmore might still threaten them. But beneath the fear was something else. Joy. Hope. The sense that this baby was a symbol of the life she and Ryder were building. Proof that they were moving forward, not just surviving, but truly living. When Ryder returned at noon, dusty and tired, Lily met him at the door. "I need to tell you something," she said, taking his hands. He looked at her, concern flickering across his face. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," she said quickly. "At least, I do not think so. Ryder, I am with child. We are going to have a baby." For a moment he just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then a smile broke across his face, so wide and genuine that it transformed him. "A baby?" he said, his voice full of wonder. "Lily, that is wonderful. That is the best news I have ever heard." He picked her up carefully, mindful of her as always, and spun her around. Lily laughed, a sound of pure happiness that surprised her with its intensity. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply, his hands framing her face. "We are going to be parents," he said, still smiling. "I am going to be a father. Lily, I promise you our child will grow up safe and loved and protected. I will build us a life where they never have to be afraid." "I believe you," Lily said, and she meant it. The months of her pregnancy were some of the happiest of Lily's life. Her fear did not disappear entirely, but it was overshadowed by the joy and anticipation of the coming baby. Ryder was attentive to the point of being overprotective, insisting she rest more, take on less physical labor, stay out of the hot sun. Lily tolerated his fussing with good humor because she knew it came from love. They began preparing the cabin for the baby, setting up a cradle that Ryder built from smooth cottonwood. Lily sewed tiny clothes and blankets, marveling at how small they were, how fragile. She talked to the baby as she worked, telling it stories about its father, about the beautiful land they lived on, about all the adventures they would have together. No further word came from Charles Whitmore. The marshal stopped by occasionally to check on them and reported that there had been no legal filings, no further attempts to locate Lily. It seemed that Charles had either given up or was biding his time. Lily preferred to believe the former, though she knew Ryder remained vigilant, always watching the horizon, always ready to protect his family. The baby was born on a cold January night, almost exactly 2 years after Ryder had found Lily broken and bleeding in that Denver alley. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Lily was certain she could not go on, could not endure another minute of the pain. But Ryder was there, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, telling her she was strong. She could do this. She was the bravest person he knew. When the baby finally arrived, wailing lustily, the midwife from Scottsbluff announced it was a boy. "A son," Ryder said, his voice choked with emotion as the midwife placed the tiny, squirming bundle in his arms. "Lily, we have a son." Lily, exhausted but elated, reached out to touch the baby's downy head. "He is perfect," she whispered. They named him Samuel, after the man who had saved Ryder and his mother all those years ago. Samuel Ryder Jameson came into the world healthy and strong, and from the moment he drew his first breath, he was loved beyond measure. Fatherhood transformed Ryder in ways Lily had not expected. He was patient and gentle with the baby, unafraid of the tiny, fragile life they had created. He walked the floor with Samuel when he fussed at night, sang to him in a low, rumbling voice, and talked to him constantly as if the infant could understand every word. Watching Ryder with their son made Lily fall in love with him all over again, deeper and more intensely than she had thought possible. As Samuel grew from an infant to a chubby, smiling baby, the homestead grew as well. Ryder expanded the herd, built a larger barn, and began hiring seasonal help during calving and branding. They were not wealthy by any means, but they were comfortable, able to support themselves and put a little aside for the future. Lily kept the books and managed the household, and together they made decisions about the ranch. One evening when Samuel was about 6 months old, Lily and Ryder sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the bluffs in shades of gold and red. Samuel was asleep in his cradle inside, and for the moment everything was peaceful. "I have been thinking," Ryder said, reaching over to take Lily's hand, "about what happens if Charles ever does come back, about how to make sure you and Samuel are protected no matter what." Lily tensed slightly. They had not talked about Charles in months, and she had been content to let the subject lie dormant. "What do you mean?" "I mean legally," Ryder explained. "Right now, if something happened to me, everything would go to you. But if Charles were to challenge your ownership, claim you were not legally entitled because of your first marriage, it could get complicated. I want to make sure that no matter what, this land and everything we have built is yours and Samuel's. I have been talking to a lawyer in Scottsbluff, and he says we should file additional paperwork, making everything ironclad." "That makes sense," Lily said slowly. "But Ryder, nothing is going to happen to you." "Probably not," he agreed. "But I am a rancher. I work with cattle and horses every day. Accidents happen. I just want to know that if something does happen, my family is taken care of and protected." His practicality was one of the things Lily loved about him, but it also stirred old fears. "I cannot lose you," she said quietly. "You and Samuel are my whole world. If I lost you, I do not know what I would do." Ryder pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "You are not going to lose me. I plan to stick around for a long, long time. I want to see Samuel grow up. I want to have more children with you. I want to grow old watching sunsets from this porch, but I also want to be smart and make sure everything is in order. That is all." Lily nodded against his shoulder, taking comfort in his solid presence. "All right. We will file the paperwork. We will make sure everything is protected." They filed the legal documents the following week, and Lily felt a measure of her old fear ease. The lawyer assured them that their claim to the homestead was secure, that Lily's marriage to Ryder superseded any potential claims from her first marriage, and that as Samuel's mother, she would have full rights to the property if anything happened to Ryder. But the universe has a way of testing even the most careful plans. It was late summer, the air thick with heat and the smell of ripening grass, when Charles Whitmore finally made his move. But it was not the move any of them had expected. Marshall Carter rode out to the homestead one afternoon, his face grim. Lily saw him coming and felt her stomach drop. Ryder was in the near pasture, and she called to him as she stepped out to meet the marshal. "What is wrong?" she asked as Ryder jogged up to join them. "I have got news from Denver," Marshal Carter said, dismounting. "It seems Charles Whitmore died 3 weeks ago. Heart gave out, according to the telegram I received. His lawyers have been trying to locate his daughter-in-law, Lily Katherine Whitmore, because apparently he left her something in his will." Lily felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. Charles was dead. After all this time, all the fear, all the running, he was simply gone. "He left me something?" she said blankly. "According to the telegram, yes, a substantial something. The lawyers say he changed his will about a year ago. I do not have all the details, but they are requesting you come to Denver to handle the estate." "I am not going back there," Lily said immediately, her voice sharp with old panic. "I do not care what he left me. I am not going back." "I understand your feelings," Marshal Carter said gently. "But if Whitmore left you a substantial inheritance, you might want to consider it. That money could secure your family's future, And the man is dead, Mrs. Jameson. He cannot hurt you anymore. Ryder put his arm around Lily's shoulders. What exactly did he leave her? The telegram says it is his entire estate, including the ranch. Apparently, with his son Thomas dead and no other heirs, everything goes to his daughter-in-law. The lawyers estimate the value at over $100,000. Lily felt dizzy. $100,000 was more money than she could comprehend. The ranch Charles had guarded so jealously that he had tried to kill her over was now hers. Why would he do that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He hated me. He tried to murder me. I do not know, the marshal admitted, but the lawyers say the will is legal and properly filed. Maybe he had a change of heart. Maybe he felt guilty. Either way, the inheritance is yours if you want to claim it. Ryder looked down at Lily, his expression concerned. It is your choice, he said quietly. If you do not want to go back to Denver, if you do not want to deal with any of this, we will ignore it. We are doing fine here. We do not need Whitmore's money. Lily thought about it, her mind spinning. Part of her wanted to do exactly what Ryder suggested, to ignore Charles's final gesture and continue building the life they had here. But another part of her, the practical part that had learned to think about the future, recognized what this money could mean: security for Samuel, the ability to expand the ranch, to hire more help so Ryder was not working himself to exhaustion, education for their children, a cushion against hard times. I want to claim it, she said finally, but I do not want to go alone. You will not be alone, Ryder said immediately. We will go together, all three of us. We will handle whatever needs to be handled, and then we will come home. The trip to Denver was strange and surreal. Lily had not set foot in the city in more than 2 years, and returning felt like stepping back into a nightmare. But Ryder was beside her every step of the way, his presence solid and reassuring. They stayed in a modest hotel and met with Charles's lawyers the day after they arrived. The reading of the will was a formal affair in a wood-paneled office that smelled of cigars and old leather. The lawyer, a thin, serious man named Mr. Pemberton, read through the legal language with practiced efficiency. As Marshal Carter had said, Charles had left his entire estate to Lily. The ranch, the house in Denver, his investments and holdings, everything. But there was also a letter, sealed and addressed to Lily in Charles's own handwriting. Mr. Pemberton handed it to her with a somber expression. Mr. Whitmore left instructions that you were to receive this personally. Lily stared at the envelope, her hands shaking slightly. Ryder reached over and squeezed her hand, offering silent support. Finally, she broke the seal and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. The handwriting was shaky but clear. Lily, if you are reading this, then I am dead, and you have survived. I will not insult you by asking for forgiveness because I know I do not deserve it. What I did to you was unforgivable. I tried to murder you because of my own greed and stubbornness, and that is a sin I will answer for in the next life. I changed my will because it was the only way I could think to make amends. You were right to inherit Thomas's share of the ranch. You were his wife, and he wanted you to be provided for. I let my pride and my anger blind me to that. I hope this inheritance will give you the security and future you deserve. I do not expect you to think well of me. I do not think well of myself. But I wanted you to know that I spent the last year of my life regretting what I did, wishing I could take it back. For what little it is worth, I am sorry. Charles Whitmore Lily read the letter twice, then handed it to Ryder without a word. He read it silently, his jaw tight. What do you think? He asked when he finished. I think he was a coward who only found his conscience when he knew he was dying, Lily said, her voice hard. But I also think he did the right thing in the end, even if it was for the wrong reasons. This money will give Samuel opportunities we could never provide on our own. It will give us a future without fear or struggle. I will take it, not because I forgive Charles, but because I am not going to let pride or bitterness cost my family security. Ryder nodded slowly. You are a stronger woman than most, Lily Jameson. I learned from the best, she said, leaning against him. They spent a week in Denver settling the estate. Lily sold the house and most of the furnishings, wanting nothing from the place where she had almost died. The ranch itself, the vast cattle operation that had been the source of so much pain, she kept. But she hired a manager to run it, with instructions to share the profits with the ranch hands who had worked it faithfully for years. She had no desire to live on that land or oversee it personally, but she also did not want to abandon the people whose livelihoods depended on it. By the time they returned to Scottsbluff, Lily was the wealthiest woman in the Nebraska Panhandle. But more importantly, she was free. Free from fear, free from the past, free to build whatever future she and Ryder could imagine. With the inheritance, they expanded their own ranch significantly. They purchased adjoining land, increasing their holdings to several thousand acres. They built a larger house, a beautiful 2-story structure with a wide porch and large windows that caught the morning sun. They hired permanent hands to help with the work, giving Ryder more time to spend with his family. Samuel grew from a baby into a curious, adventurous toddler who loved following his father around the ranch. Lily discovered she was pregnant again when Samuel was 2, and this time the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she was not constantly afraid. Their second child, a daughter they named Rose, was born on a warm spring morning with considerably less drama than her brother's arrival. Ryder held his daughter with the same tender wonder he had shown Samuel, and watching him cradle the tiny girl, Lily felt her heart swell with so much love she thought it might burst. 2 children, Ryder said, looking at Lily with shining eyes. We have 2 beautiful children, a successful ranch, and a future brighter than I ever dreamed possible. How did a wandering cowboy like me get so lucky? It was not luck, Lily said softly. It was kindness. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped without expecting anything in return. Everything we have now, everything we are, started with that one act of compassion. I would do it again in a heartbeat, Ryder said. Finding you, saving you was the best thing I ever did. You gave my life meaning, Lily. You made me want to stop running and put down roots. You gave me a reason to build something lasting. We built it together, Lily corrected, and we will keep building it. For Samuel and Rose, for the children we might have in the future, for us. The years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. The ranch thrived under their joint management. Samuel grew into a strong, kind boy who loved the land and the cattle. Rose was quieter than her brother, but no less determined, with a sharp mind and her father's steady presence. 2 more children joined the family, another boy they named Thomas after Lily's first husband, honoring the man who had given her an escape from poverty even if their marriage had not been passionate, and finally another girl they named Grace. The house was always full of noise and laughter, of children running through the rooms, of family dinners and holiday celebrations. Ryder and Lily's marriage deepened over the years, growing from passionate love into something even stronger, a partnership built on mutual respect, shared goals, and unshakable trust. Lily never forgot where she had come from, the terror and pain of that day when Charles pushed her down the stairs, but that memory lost its power to hurt her. It became simply part of her story, a dark beginning to a beautiful life. Beautiful, she had survived, and in surviving she had found something precious. She had found love, real and true and lasting. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Ryder took Lily up to the top of the bluffs that overlooked their ranch. They stood hand in hand looking out over the land they had built together, the cattle grazing peacefully in the valley below, the house where their children slept safe and warm. "Do you remember when I first brought you here?" Ryder asked, his arm around her waist. "You were so broken, so scared. I was not sure you would make it." "I remember," Lily said, leaning into him. "I remember thinking I had nothing left to live for, that Charles had taken everything from me. But then you showed me that I was wrong. You showed me that I had everything ahead of me. You gave me a reason to heal, a reason to fight, a reason to hope." "You did all the hard work," Ryder said. "I just gave you a safe place to do it." You gave me more than that, Lily said, turning to face him. You gave me love. Real, honest, unconditional love. The kind I did not even know existed. And you gave me a family, a home, a life worth living. Ryder Jameson, you are the best man I have ever known, and I fall more in love with you every single day. Ryder kissed her then, soft and sweet, with the prairie wind blowing around them and the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. When they finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Lily Jameson. I will love you until the day I die, and probably long after that. And I love you, Lily whispered. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for giving me this beautiful life. They stood there as the sun set completely and the stars came out in full glory. Two people who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances and built something bright and lasting from the ruins. Below them, their ranch spread out like a promise, solid and real, and theirs. Their children slept peacefully, safe, and loved. And the future stretched out before them, full of endless possibility. Lily thought back to that terrible day in Denver, to the moment when she fell and thought her life was over. She had been wrong. Her life had not ended that day. It had simply been waiting to begin, waiting for a cowboy with a kind heart to find her and show her what love really meant. And she had never been more grateful for anything in her life. Years continued to roll by like the prairie grass in the wind, and the Jameson Ranch became one of the most respected operations in the Nebraska Panhandle. Samuel, now a young man of 18, worked alongside his father, learning every aspect of ranching with the same careful attention to detail that Ryder had always shown. Rose, at 16, helped her mother manage the household and kept the books with meticulous precision. Thomas, 12, and Grace, 10, were still in school but spent every spare moment on horseback, riding the range with their siblings. Lily watched her children grow with a sense of deep satisfaction. They were confident and capable, raised in an environment of love and security. They knew nothing of the violence and fear that had marked her early life, and that was exactly as she wanted it. She had told them, when they were old enough to understand, about her first marriage and about Charles Whitmore. She wanted them to know her story, to understand where they came from and how fragile security could be. But she also wanted them to know that survival was possible, that healing was real, and that love could triumph over even the darkest circumstances. One autumn evening when Lily was 43 years old, she and Ryder sat on the porch swing they had installed years before. The children were all inside, the older ones helping the younger with schoolwork. And for a moment, Lily and Ryder had the porch to themselves. It was a rare moment of quiet, and they savored it. Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if I had not found you that day? Ryder asked, his arm around her shoulders. Lily was quiet for a moment, considering. I try not to, she said honestly, because thinking about it makes me realize how close I came to dying. If you had not been in Denver that day, if you had not heard the doctor, if you had not gone looking for me, I would be dead. Charles would have made sure of it. But you did find me, Ryder. Against all odds, you were exactly where I needed you to be, exactly when I needed you. I do not think that was coincidence. I think it was fate. I am not sure I believe in fate, Ryder said thoughtfully, but I believe in being in the right place at the right time. And I believe in acting when you see someone in need. If believing in fate helps you make sense of it, though, then I am content with that. What about you? Lily asked. Do you ever regret the path your life took? You wanted to keep moving, to stay free and unattached. Instead, you got saddled with a damaged woman and eventually 4 children. Did you ever wish you had made different choices? Ryder turned to look at her, his eyes serious. Not for one single second, he said firmly. Lily, before I found you, I was just drifting. I told myself I was free, but really I was just running away from the possibility of being hurt. I was letting fear dictate my life just as much as you were after Charles hurt you. You did not saddle me with anything. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to be brave. You taught me that putting down roots does not make you vulnerable. It makes you strong. Our children, our ranch, our life together, this is everything I never knew I wanted, and I would not trade it for anything. Lily felt tears sting her eyes, but they were happy tears. I love you so much, she whispered. And I love you, Ryder said, kissing her temple. Forever and always. Inside the house, they could hear Samuel laughing at something Rose said, could hear Thomas and Grace arguing good-naturedly over a math problem, the sounds of their family, healthy and whole and happy. We did it, Lily said softly. We built something real, something lasting. We did, Ryder agreed. And we are not done yet. We have got grandchildren to look forward to and growing old together and watching our children build their own lives. We have got years ahead of us, Lily. Years and years. And they did. Samuel married at 22, bringing home a lovely young woman named Margaret who fit into the Jameson family as if she had always been there. Rose married at 19, choosing a neighboring rancher's son who shared her love of horses and open spaces. Thomas and Grace eventually found partners as well, and the Jameson Ranch became the center of a growing, sprawling family. Ryder and Lily became grandparents, then great-grandparents. They aged together, Ryder's dark hair turning silver, Lily's face gaining lines that spoke of years of laughter and sunshine. They remained partners in every sense, working together to manage the ranch, even as they gradually handed over more responsibility to their children. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a massive celebration. There were over 30 people present. Children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren, all of them carrying the Jameson name or connected to it by marriage. They set up tables in the yard, roasted an entire steer, and celebrated late into the night under the stars. At one point, Samuel stood up and raised his glass. I want to propose a toast, he said, his voice carrying across the gathering. To my parents, Ryder and Lily Jameson. They built this ranch with their bare hands, raised us with love and discipline, and taught us what it means to be strong, to be kind, and to be true to your word. Everything we have, everything we are, comes from them. To Mom and Dad. To Mom and Dad, the rest of the family echoed, raising their glasses. Lily looked around at the sea of faces, at the family that had sprung from one act of kindness on a Denver street so many years ago. She thought about the girl she had been, broken and bleeding at the bottom of a staircase, certain her life was over. If she could go back and tell that girl what was waiting for her, tell her about the cowboy who would find her and the love they would build, the family they would create, would that girl have believed her? Probably not. It seemed too much like a fairy tale, too good to be true. But it was true. It was real. And it was hers. Ryder squeezed her hand, and she looked over at him. His eyes, still sharp and clear despite his 70 years, were full of love and contentment. Happy anniversary, my love, he said softly. Happy anniversary, Lily replied, her heart full to bursting. They danced that night, slowly swaying under the stars while their family watched and smiled. Lily rested her head on Ryder's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek, and thought about the journey they had taken together. From Denver to Scottsbluff, from strangers to partners to lovers, from two broken people to the foundation of something strong and enduring. Thank you, she whispered into his shirt. For what? Ryder asked. For everything, for finding me, for saving me, for loving me, for giving me this life. Thank you for letting me, Ryder said. Thank you for being brave enough to heal, to trust, to love again. You are the strongest person I have ever known, Lily Jameson, and I am honored to be your husband. They stood there, two people who had found each other in the darkest of times and built a legacy of light. Around them, their family celebrated, laughing and talking and creating memories that would last generations. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, constant and eternal. And in that moment, Lily knew that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. She had survived the fall, both literal and figurative. She had healed, she had loved, and she had built a life beyond anything she could have imagined. It was more than enough. It was everything. As Lily and Ryder grew older, they made the decision to step back entirely from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, leaving it in the capable hands of Samuel and his siblings. They remained in the big house they had built, but their days were now filled with quiet pleasures. Morning coffee on the porch, watching the sun rise over the bluffs, tending a small garden that Lily had always wanted but never had time for, reading together in the evenings, playing with grandchildren and great-grandchildren who came to visit. They talked often about their life together, reminiscing about the early days, the struggles and triumphs, the moments of joy and sorrow. They told their story to anyone who would listen, wanting people to understand that love could heal even the deepest wounds, that kindness could change the course of a life, that hope was always possible even in the darkest circumstances. Ryder passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, with Lily beside him holding his hand. His last words were, "I love you, Lily. Always have, always will." Lily grieved deeply, as anyone would for the loss of their life partner, but her grief was tempered by gratitude for the 46 years they had shared, for the love they had built, for the legacy they had created. She knew Ryder would not want her to spend her remaining time in sorrow, so she dried her tears and continued living, surrounded by the family they had made together. She lived another 5 years after Ryder's death, content and peaceful, watching her great-grandchildren grow and seeing the ranch continue to thrive under the management of her children and grandchildren. And when her time came, she went willingly, ready to be reunited with the cowboy who had saved her life and given her a love beyond measure. They buried her next to Ryder on a hillside overlooking the ranch, where they could watch over the land they had built together for eternity. The entire family gathered for the funeral, 3 generations strong, all of them testaments to the power of love and the resilience of the human spirit. And if you go to that hillside today, you will find 2 simple headstones side by side. One reads, Ryder Samuel Jameson, loving husband, father, and friend. The other, Lily Katherine Jameson, beloved wife, mother, and survivor. Between them, carved into the earth, are the words, "Together forever." Because some love stories do not end with death. Some love stories are so strong, so true, that they echo through generations, inspiring everyone who hears them to believe in the possibility of healing, of hope, and of love that conquers all. This was such a story, and it began with a fall and a cowboy who refused to walk by,